Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. I'm in yet another new place in the library. I have to tell you what just happened. I just came upstairs. I usually read at the other end of the room, and the window is wide open, and my papers are blown everywhere, and it must not have been latched, and it's so windy here today that the window is wide open. So I got to deal with that, but not right now. I mean, it broke and I have to close it, that kind of deal with it. So goes life. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. It is Saturday, May 9th. I have a bit of coffee here. Frankenstein Tea is a daily program every day at 3 o'clock with me. I'm Kristen. I'm the director of the Island Free Library. And it is a story time, but it is for adult listeners. So those of you who are returning to Frankenstein Tea, you know that I read stories of a wide range, and some of them have swears, and some of them have adult content. They're from different countries. They're by different from different centuries. All kinds of things are going on with the stories here read at Frankenstein Tea. And I hope that makes it enjoyable for everyone. Today, I've had another busy day here in the library world. We're putting together some packages of books to distribute tomorrow for Mother's Day. So we're working on a little Mother's Day project, which is exciting. And I just had a great meeting with our youth services librarian, Morgan Walsh. The kids call her Miss Morgan, so we try to call her Miss Morgan. And we just had a great meeting, and she's got great ideas brewing. And she reads every day at 6 p.m. for a family read aloud that her mother and my mom and a wide variety of ages are enjoying. So I encourage you to check that one out. She just started a book yesterday, and you can catch the recording of it on Facebook, or uploading them here to YouTube, so you can get caught up. She reads Monday through Friday, so you have 2 days to get caught up. She just started her new one, and it seems to be people are enjoying it already. So that was what I did today. We're packing up our Mother's Day things. I have a broken window. It's a busy day here on this COVID time of librarianship. So I'm reading something today that I have not pre-read. I did pre-read a story in here that I could read, but I sort of skimmed this other story, and I think it's going to be really, I think I'm going to like it. So I'm reading a book for me today. And let's hope I can get through it. I like to read it ahead of time. I like to have a little rhythm of it. I look up words I don't know how to pronounce. I get a sense of the story so that I don't botch it too badly. So this is a little bit of a cold read. So wish me luck and hang in there with me. But it's not like I'm doing a cold read of like Chekhov, right? Like, that I couldn't do. Or even yesterday with Kafka. This I think I can do. Maybe. Who knows? This is Penelope Lively. The name of this book is The Purple Swamp Hen and Other Stories. Penelope Lively, The Purple Swamp Hen and Other Stories. It is published by, I had never read Penelope Lively, but I enjoyed the short story I read today, by Viking in 2016. And it says that Penelope Lively won the Booker Prize. I say that from my mother. So the light that went off behind me is motion. It's not a ghost, although sometimes I think this is where the ghost of the library lives. But, okay, everybody have something to drink? Everybody ready for a story? So this is a couple pages here. But I kind of felt like that. I kind of felt like, settling in for a minute and spending some time together and reading something a little longer. Don't be scared away. It's not, it's not 50 pages. It's this many. You see that? We can do that. Who do you think you were? In West Somerset in 1787, a young woman who could not read or write, but knew fine how to skin a rabbit or pluck a fowl, forged her way through autumn mud from Roadhoosh to Withcombe, where she would fetch the old rooster from her Aunt Marianne. The rooster was destined for the pot, and so no further part in this story, and has no further part in this story, except that as it was handed over, squawking, both Sarah and her aunt experienced a most unusual sensation, like a mild electric shock, a concept that would have baffled them. Aunt Marianne said, "A goose walked over my grave." Sarah was busy subduing the rooster and tucked it under one arm. In her other hand, she carried the basket that had contained a fresh loaf and some potatoes, fair exchange for the rooster. She shivered, though she hadn't been feeling cold. And she'd be back off. There was rain to come. The rooster made one final protest. Aunt Marianne went into her cottage, and Sarah Weber walked on into the rest of her life. In London in 2015, another young woman stares at a screen. She scrolls through names, a cascade of names. She frowns. She taps. She pulls up a further name torrent. She makes a note on a pad beside her laptop. She scrolls again, and lo, she spots a most satisfactory connection. She pounces, makes a further note, and then she decides to call it a day. She closes the laptop. She is 24 years old and is engaged in postgraduate work. She would be hard put to pluck a fowl, let alone skin a rabbit. Caroline puts the laptop into her briefcase, the laptop that knows everything, or most things, and in which the past is stored, by way of 1,000 names, 10,000s of names, hundreds of thousands. The laptop knew about the relationship between Marianne Crowhurst and Sarah Weber, though possibly not about the red rooster. It is the end of the working day for Caroline Gladwell. She works in the reading room of the British Library because she may have need of its resources, though much of the time she is making use of the omniscient laptop. She is doing an MA in economic history, of which a component part is the dissertation on a subject of her own choice. She has chosen to research her own family history back to the early 17th century in order to demonstrate the directive force of economic circumstance on individual lives. She will show why unemployment in the shipbuilding industry impelled this ancestor to leave Portsmouth, why opportunities in domestic service brought that one to Cheltenham. At the moment, she is tracing forebears of her mother's, who appear to have been stuck generations deep in the West Country, being born, marrying, dying, within a relatively small area. Agricultural laborers for the most part, and it would seem that conditions were favorable enough to allow of staying put. Caroline is pleased with her choice of subject for the dissertation, which, she feels, lends color to the sometimes gray backcloth of economic history. Persons, people, the real people who are the drivers, the facilitators, often the victims of economic developments. Names, she can cite them, the Johns and the Georges and Alberts, the Elizas and Alices and Janes, whose toil has contributed to a climate of prosperity or otherwise. She will pinpoint certain names, evoke their circumstances, and tether them with a detailed account of their particular occupation. The dissertation, which will be richly informative about bricklaying, needle making, baking, brewing, and much else. It will bring the past alive, make it relevant. Caroline is intensely concerned with history. She is hoping for a career in academic life, and she sometimes feels that the past is seen simply as an object of study, that its very reality is ignored. The fact that it happened, that these people lived and died, the populace within the laptop. Next year, Caroline will get married. Caroline Gladwell will become Caroline Fox, though of course she will not use Alan's name, generally speaking, but will remain Caroline Gladwell. In this, she is very different from the young women whose names have scrolled down in front of her and for whom marriage meant immediate abandonment of their birth name. They became their husband's appendage forever after, a change that is a signifier for the times, she thinks, as she gets a number 73 bus to head for home. Our times, now, which is so much not then. Home is a one-bedroom flat in Stoke Newington, for which Caroline and Alan pay a wicked amount of rent. The flat is the ground floor of an insignificant two-story Victorian terrace house, which would once have housed a lower middle-class family of modest means, and is now worth around £1 million. If Caroline and Alan were to buy their flat from the landlord, they would have to pay $500,000 or so for sitting room, bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, broom cupboard, and minuscule entrance hall. That is, of course, out of the question. Alan is quite favorably placed in economic terms. He is on the lowest rung of the civil service ladder at the Home Office. If he beavers away for the requisite number of years and climbs accordingly, he will eventually be in a position to hang his hat on a pension. Caroline herself has no such certainty, not yet, but with her MA under the belt, to add polish to her first, she will be equipped for a decently paid teaching job, even if she doesn't make academia. The flat feels chilly. It is November. The days are closing in. Caroline puts the heating on, draws curtains, unpacks the shopping she picked up on the way. Lemon garlic roasted chicken thighs for supper. Over which, presently, she and Alan exchange their days. He has had a slight run-in with a superior and would have liked to have given him a piece of his mind, but was sensible enough not to do so. Alan is pragmatic, clever, and usually cheerful. He is stockily built, has large and compelling brown eyes, and Caroline loves him inordinately. She tells him about today's search. And then, very suddenly, everything clicked into place. I realized that a Mary Ann Crowhurst was the aunt of a Sarah Weber, and I could fit that family tree together. Your Somerset peasants, says Alan. Agricultural workers. Hodge, says Alan, the genetic term for 19th century laborers. No names, just a tribe of Hodges. He too read history at the university and has acquired arcane pieces of information. And that's what I'm doing, says Caroline triumphantly, filling in the names. They smile fondly at each other across the lemon garlic chicken. Alan is thinking that Caroline's face is a perfect heart shape and that it is quite unfair for a girl to be so pretty and also so bright. Caroline is savoring the moment. If she were a cat, she would be purring. Caroline says, it is almost creepy that these people are my forebears. That there is a connection, genes, DNA, and that nobody, so far as I know, has ever done this before, reached back and made the links, touched them, as it were. I am their future, She was silent for a moment. It feels quite odd. You identify, almost. You can't really identify. It's impossible. Their circumstances are so different. The mindset, the assumptions, the expectations. Think of it. The age before antibiotics, sanitation. People likely to be clobbered by anything and everything. She stared at him. All the same. And, he went on, most appropriately, it's that program tonight. Do you want to see it? Alan is referring to the television program, Who Do You Think You Are?, in which some celebrity is confronted with their family history, usually to be startled by the revelation of an ancestral convict or slave owner. Reality genealogy. And so, later, they watch with amusement as a well-known actor learns that his great-great-great-grandfather was imprisoned for body snatching. As compensation, there is another distant grandparent who died in the workhouse. Penury is always a badge of honor. They didn't get that from the parish records, says Alan, the body snatcher. No, of course not. They have to investigate further if someone looks interesting, as do I. Indeed. When Caroline can identify a name that invites inquiry on account perhaps of their trade or their sudden movement from one place to another, or even an early death, she tries to acquire further information. This is where she may have to leave her comfort zone in the British Library reading room and hive off in pursuit of unfamiliar archives. She may try to find a particular street, even a house, a gravestone. Actually, all this is quite good fun. Heading off to places she has never been to before, engaging with helpful people in some archive, taking to unfamiliar streets and spotting survivals. Oh, here's the terrace in which so-and-so lived, still standing, no longer a slum, all gentrified now. And yes, here is the gravestone I'm after, giving substance to a name on a list. She really did live and die. At the moment, Caroline is in pursuit of a descendant of those West Country Hodges, peasants, agricultural workers, a man who seems to have broken out and headed off to Bath. Why? What was he doing there? Did he marry? Have children? In Bath, in 1840, a young man worked on a building site. A railway station was being built, though the young man was barely aware of the ultimate purpose of his labors. Suffice it that he had daily work and daily pay, superior to the circumstances he had known where he was born and grew up, where there might be work and a meal on the table, but very well might not. Today, he would be called an economic migrant, though he has migrated merely across a county. He is in fine fettle on this spring morning, heaving barrow loads of golden Bath stone and thinking of his Eliza, to whom he was married only yesterday. He thinks of the moment when the priest declared them man and wife, when he experienced what felt like a great surge of being, an affirmation of his very existence. And he thought of what Eliza said after. I came over all funny, Tom, when he said that, man and wife. And he had known that she must have shared this momentary euphoria. Eliza is Bath born and bred. Her father is an innkeeper, and Tom and Eliza have rooms over the inn, where, in due course, they too will breed. In London, in 2015, Caroline Gladwell spots a marriage entry that hones in on her wandering Hodge and most satisfactorily establishes that in 1840, he was married in Bath to Eliza Fulbrook. She places Tom and Eliza at the head of a new family tree in expectation of the births for which she will search in due course. Caroline suspects that Tom had been drawn to Bath by the work opportunities offered in the construction industry. Brunel's new railway station, for instance, and she will now do some research on that. She thinks of this as coloring in, giving background, substance to the stark recital of names. A name can then bloom a little. It can conjure up the image of a person. Tom Weber can become a robust young man laboring amid the dust and clamor of a 19th century building enterprise. Caroline thinks a lot about ages, as she pursues one name and another. Infant mortality, early deaths, the relative rarity of those who make it into their 80s. Death hovered 200 years ago, even 100 years ago. Caroline has 4 octogenarian grandparents doing quite nicely, bar various hip or knee problems. Caroline herself is young in today's terms, but would have been seen more as mature a couple of 100 years ago, 100 even. Perceptions of age shift as expectation of life lengthens. 1/3 of the children born today will live to be 100. My own, perhaps, she thinks. Goodness! Disappearing off into the 22nd century, she and Alan plan to start a baby in a year or so after their spring wedding. Another signifier for the times, she reflects, scrolling through some Bath births of the 1840s in search of Tom Weber's progeny. Child born untypically in wedlock, when actually, nowadays, most are not. And born according to schedule, all being well, instead of arbitrary, possibly unwelcome. Ah, she has found it. A son born to Tom and Eliza in 1841, within wedlock by a comfortable few months. Caroline now accelerates the 19th century. She whisks through time, disposing of decade after decade, until in due course she has nailed down the descendants of Tom and Eliza Weber onto the 4th and 5th generation, forging ahead into a new century. Not her mother's direct ancestors, but a branch line, and interesting in itself for economic flexibility. Male Webers abandon the building trade and become grocers, brewers, and in one instance, a funeral director. But at lunchtime, Caroline closes her laptop, consigns the past to another day, and steps out into the present, away from the British Library and in the direction of Oxford Street. She's taking an afternoon off. She has a date with a friend to consider wedding dresses. Rosie is also getting married next year. Weddings are almost a cult for their generation. People marry with a flourish in their late 20s or so, often having been together for several years. Caroline remarks on this to Rosie as they inspect an acreage of white and ivory silk, tulle, organza in the bridal department. Why do we do it? My mom says in her day, most of her friends just sneaked into a registry office and then had a family lunch somewhere. She and my father didn't bother till I was nearly 2. My parents never have. Rosie works in a bookshop, would like to get into publishing. She is short and dark, a foil to tall, fair Caroline. What about this one? Too frothy for me. I don't want froth either. So why do we? Because each other does, I suppose. I've been to 5 this year already. You got to retaliate. This one? No, I don't want to look half naked. My parents are still in recovery. I imagine my mom had nearly died. Having you? Yes, everything went horribly wrong. First I was stuck, and then she had a hemorrhage, an infection too. She was very ill after. Scary. Mostly it seems to be a doodle nowadays. Sue Parker, remember Sue? She went shopping in Brent Cross the next day. This? Rosie brandishes a beaded confection. You're joking. Utterly bling. They are getting tired of wedding dresses and retreat to the coffee shops. I'm saturated in marriages, says Caroline, researching marriage after marriage, but it's just names and dates. You want to know more. What did she wear? I had a great someone or other yesterday in Bath, Eliza. You find yourself imagining them. Write a historical novel. Be the next Hilary Mantel. Cutting edge stuff nowadays. Caroline shrugs. I can't think like that. She wants to explain that what she reads in lists, entries, bare references has come to reflect some alternative reality. Nothing to do with fiction. But it would be hard to put into words without sounding fey, and in any case, Rosie has moved on to other matters. A flat she and her partner covet but cannot afford. A job interview next week. The person they caught nicking books in the shop. Actually, in a way, I couldn't help feeling good on him, more high-minded than your run-of-the-mill shoplifter. They consider this ethical point over another coffee and part company, having got nowhere with the matter of wedding dresses, as Rosie observes. Perhaps we don't take marriage seriously enough, says Caroline, an excuse for an event rather than a rite of passage. They agree to pillage the wedding department at Selfridge's on some other occasion. Somewhere in London, in 1821, a young woman is giving birth. She is in the final stages of labor, but the child is awkwardly placed. She, as it happens, is presenting feet first. The labor has been arrested, hour by hour. The woman is weakening, dying. Eventually, the midwife decides to risk manual extraction, plunging her hand into the uterus to grasp the child by the feet and pull. A procedure potentially harmful to both mother and child, but needs must in this instance. The child is dragged forth. Wonderfully, she cries. The mother is beyond speech or crying, and the placenta has not been delivered. The doctor summoned earlier now arrives, late, hurrying in from the busy street, and at once rummages for the placenta. 2 days later, Maria Gladwell dies. Elsewhere in London, in 2015, Caroline arrives back at the flat later than usual and voluble about her day's work. I got so involved today. Guess what? I found myself, as it were, Caroline Gladwell. How weird is that? Alan considers that this is not at all weird. Caroline was, after all, a popular name in the 1820s. His Caroline, has explained that she was now pursuing her father's ancestry and had arrived at this woman, a Maria Gladwell, who died in childbirth in 1821. The child, Caroline, having survived. I suppose so, but it did rather jump out at me. And the mother dying. But your mother didn't, says Alan, only because of 20th century obstetrics. Caroline had decided to follow up that entry in the family tree with a short excursion on the conditions of childbirth in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. She has already read fairly extensively. In the early 1800s, she has learned 1 in 8 childbirths ended with the death of the mother. Maria Gladwell was one of those, then a statistic. The entry that Caroline had found stated only that she died in childbirth, which had led her to the confirming entry of the birth of her daughter Caroline 2 days earlier. What happened in the interim? Well, Caroline speculated. Maria had very likely contracted puerperal fever in the absence of basic hygiene. The notion of hand washing in a solution of chlorinated lime was not introduced until the 1840s, and many things could have gone wrong during the birth, which would nowadays be addressed by a forceps delivery or an emergency cesarean, or if the child was known to be awkwardly positioned, A cesarean would have taken place automatically. She died, Caroline continues, because she was giving birth in 1821 and not like my mother in 1991. And what happened to your namesake? That's what I must find out. Finding her own name had startled Caroline rather more than she admitted. Your name is your identity. She had thought about this, coming home on the bus. I know who I am because I know my name. I don't know who these people all around me are because I don't know their names. You read of people who have forgotten their names because of accident or illness, and they are displaced, adrift, in need of help. The medics come running. You are not allowed to be without a name. Your name confirms that you exist, that you are you, that you can stand up and be counted. And she had my name back then. Of course, there are always people who have the same name as someone else, thousands of them. There are no doubt other Caroline Gladwells today. I may have walked past one in the street. And that feels a bit funny too, but somehow not as weird. Disturbing even, as a person dead a long time ago. How did she live? Marriage? Children? When did she die? There is a new flavor now to this piece of research, Caroline finds, this oddly personal element, a kind of fortuitous intimacy. She is both intrigued by this and a bit disconcerted, wrong-footed, as it were, as though the great neutral resource into which she taps had suddenly answered back, spoken. She gets down to it the next day. She has sighted this Caroline within a new family tree. The interesting thing will be to see if she is a direct forebear, to find her children and theirs, and see if they can be fined down to a great-grandparent, say. First, she needs a marriage, but can find none. Oh, so, to the deaths. And then she has it. Caroline Gladwell died in 1847, aged 24. 24. The rest is stark, an insistence of the bald entry that sometimes accounts for a death that is out of the ordinary. Struck by a coach. Caroline stares at this. Around her, the reading room is going about its business, impervious, while the screen in front of her delivers its news. Struck by a coach. Killed. It occurs to Caroline that this could indeed have been news at the time. The search does not take long. Sure enough, in an issue of a London paper a few days later than the death date, there is the item, tragic accident, death of a young woman, stepped into the path of an oncoming coach. Onlooker, who rushed to try to pull her back, said she appeared distracted, perhaps unwell. Coachman, much distressed. Caroline reads this. Once, twice. The brief item is somehow resonant. She reads it yet again. She wants at once to tell Alan about this. 24. How weird indeed. She starts a search through the other London papers of the period for further coverage, but finds none. And as she does so, she begins to feel, well, rather ill, shaky, not herself at all. Flu or something coming on. Oh, I really don't feel too good. She decides to go home. It's gone 5 anyway. She gathers up her things and leaves the library. She crosses the open space outside in the darkening early evening, heads for the bus stop, and then feels really quite dizzy. Taxi, she thinks. Taxi for once. I'm just not well. She stands on the pavement, searching the pounding traffic for a free taxi. Stands with aching head, feeling quite unsteady. Traffic roars past. Buses surging down the bus lane. steady stream beyond. Oh, to get home. Oh, taxi, please. And there at last is the orange light she needs. Free taxi, out in the traffic, about to go past. She steps from the pavement, waving, and as she does so, everything happens at once. She is hearing horses' hooves, thundering hooves, but it is a 73 bus that she has not seen, that is almost on her. And in that instant, arms have grabbed her by the shoulders. Someone is pulling her back. The hooves are fading. She is hearing the screech of brakes. She is back on the pavement. A man has her by the arm, a burly, efficient man saying, "You all right? You bloody nearly..." "I'm all right," she says. "This time, I'm all right. This time. Thank you." That was Penelope Lively from a book of short stories called The Purple Swamp Hen and Other Stories. It was published by Viking. Yeah, it was published by Viking, and I think that was, who remembers, 2013? Published, 2016. That story was called "And Who Do You Think You Were?" Thanks for coming to Frankenstein Tea. Please remember to take care of yourselves as Rhode Island starts to relax and loosen some restrictions. I urge everyone to take that slowly. Remember that mask wearing and social distancing is still a priority, and in fact, in Rhode Island is the law. So please, please, please abide by that for your health as well as for everyone others. And take care of your mental health as well. Get some fresh air. There's lots in this room with that broken window. And get some good sleep. Eat a nice meal. Call someone you love. Think good thoughts. And get ready for Frankenstein Tea. I'll be here tomorrow. I won't be here. I'll probably read from home. Oh, 3 o'clock tomorrow. I might be here. I might be here tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I'll see you then. Bye, everybody. Peace.